Today we'll be discussing the play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. Let's move on to the introduction. Waiting for Godot is a play by Samuel Beckett. It was originally written in French and titled An Attendant Godot. Its subtitle is A Tragicomedy in Two Acts. The original French text was composed between 9th October 1948 and 29 January 1949. Regarding the title character Godot, Godot is pronounced in many ways. With an American audience, Godot is pronounced as God-O. Samuel Beckett himself calls the title character as Godot. Waiting for Godot is a typical example of the theatre of the absurd. Theatre of the absurd plays between 1940 and 1960. So under this category, there are many plays, and it comes in the time frame between 1940 and 1960. Martin Esslin was the one who coined the term the theatre of the absurd in his book with the same title, and it was published in 1960. It talks about the absurdity of the human condition. Absurd in the sense that out of harmony with reason and propriety, in other words, illogical. So, theatre of the absurd included plays that referred to life as illogical and meaningless. Theatre of the absurd was influenced by the existential philosophy. It's a philosophical enquiry that explores the issue of human condition and studies human life. Albert Camus, through his essay The Myth of the Sisyphus, published in 1942, led towards the evolvement of existentialism. Sisyphus is a Greek mythological figure who was condemned to roll up a boulder up across a mountain and let it fall back down. So, existential philosophy basically decrees that we should find happiness within the struggle of life. We should find meaning in living even without knowing why we exist. Absurd dramatists, on the other hand, offer no solution, and their perspectives are less positive than the perspective provided by existential philosophy. So we know that theatre of the absurd belongs to the paper called Modernity and Modernism. So modernism is basically a literary movement that arose as a reaction towards the collapse of the moral, religious, social and political structures after World War One. So World War One was between 1914 and 1918, and World War Two was between 1939 and 1945. So what happened between the wars was that it caused human destruction and destruction for resources as well. And the main examples are the bombings in Nagasaki, Hiroshima, and the Holocaust as well. So, because of these wars, humankind's faith in spirituality in the Western society and culture got reduced. The themes within modernism are disillusionment and fragmentation, which we can see abundantly in T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. So, moving on to the first act, the primary characters are Estragon and Vladimir, and we can see that within the first scene, Estragon is the one who enters first, and Estragon is preoccupied with his boots. He struggles with his boots. There are nonsensical conversations between the characters. The characters talk about a lot of things, but they are in an unconnected fashion, and therefore they appear nonsensical, they are incomplete and without meaning. Estragon talks about enduring beatings, and we don't know what they are for. They consider repenting, but don't know what for. Not sure what they ask Godot. They don't even know who is Godot, and they don't know what they have asked from Godot as well. They consider hanging themselves only to pass the time as a mere distraction. In the first act, another important significant element is the leafless tree. And the leafless tree is the only organic element in the setting. The leafless tree is leafless, which is obvious, right? And what does leafless mean? It means that the society has become spiritually barren because of the wars. Another main character is Pozo, who we assume is a powerful landowner. Estragon munches on the leftover chicken bones. The chicken, which was consumed by Pozo and left on the ground, it was Estragon who picked up those bones and munched on the remaining part, which actually signifies the deprivation and hunger that Estragon faces. Lucky is a slave of Pozo, and Pozo has many other slaves as well. Lucky is always on a leash. He's supposed to carry the luggage of Pozo. He even carries food and wine for Pozo. And Lucky is a significant character. We can see that he dances and thinks in the play according to the instructions of Pozo. And while he thinks, he needs his hat. Without the hat, he cannot think. And while he thinks aloud in such a way that it results in a verbal chaos, and the other characters have to throw themselves on him to reduce the gibberish. Then another significant character is a messenger boy. So there are two messenger boys in the play. There are two messenger boys in the play, one in the first act and one in the second act. We assume that there are two because in the second act the messenger boy talks about his brother. Okay, towards the second act, the tree now has 4 to 5 leaves. So within one day, a tree cannot sprout 4 to 5 leaves. So we can assume that there is a larger time gap between the first act and the second act, and it suggests uncertainty of time. Pozo is blind. Pozo has a physical defect now. Lucky leads Pozo. Okay, earlier it was Pozo who controlled Lucky, but now we can see that Pozo is physically dependent upon Lucky. Lucky is still on a leash, but he depends upon him. Pozo does not recognize Vladimir and Estragon. So Pozo has become physically blind. Pozo has become physically blind and literally blind as well. Estragon does not remember events. The main fact is that only Vladimir is a character who remembers most of the events in the play. Messenger boy doesn't recall meeting Vladimir and Estragon in the second act because his brother was the one who came in the first act. Now moving on to the characters, Estragon and Vladimir represent everyman in the sense that they represent humanity. Estragon or Gogo. Gogo is another name given for Estragon within the play because Vladimir calls him like that. And Gogo represents the body because he talks always about his physical sufferings, his preoccupation with the boots. He's concerned with feelings, not much of an intellectual. He doesn't understand what Vladimir is saying because Vladimir is quite an intellectual. Vladimir is also known as Didi and he represents the mind. So while Estragon represents the body, Vladimir represents the mind. And he is an intellectual. He remembers most of the events which we have already discussed. Pozo seems to be a wealthy landowner with power. He sees Estragon and Vladimir as beneath him because he's powerful, he's rich. He sees people who don't have much money who don't have much power, he sees them as beneath him. And he appears to be condescending. He likes the sound of his own voice. He goes on chattering, he goes on boasting about himself, and he loves that. He abuses Lucky in the first act, and then in the second act, he relies on him. Lucky carries luggage belonging to Pozo and never puts them down. Even when Pozo stops, Lucky doesn't put the luggage down. Once he tries to put the luggage down, Pozo beats him with his stick. He chooses to remain as a slave even at the chance of liberation. In the second act, we can see that Pozo is blind and Lucky has actually the opportunity to escape from the slave owner. But Lucky chooses to remain. So we can see that Lucky is psychologically dependent upon Pozo. Depends on Pozo psychologically. Lucky cries over the talk of a sale in the market. In the first act, we can see that Pozo was talking to Estragon and Vladimir about selling Lucky and Lucky starts sobbing. Themes: absurdity of existence, purposelessness of life, folly of seeking meaning. There is no meaning within the play. There is no intended meaning because Beckett actually wants us readers to interpret various meanings from the text. He left it to the readers. Regarding the symbols, there is a transition of the leafless tree from being leafless to gaining 4 to 5 leaves, and it suggests uncertainty of the place as well. Lack of life and meaning because when the tree was lifeless in the first act. Baggage, human tendency of enslavement to burden. So one of the bags that Lucky carried had sand, and which suggests foolishness. So we can see that in a way it says that human beings carry burden with them even though they don't have to. It actually can also represent the guilt they carry. So bag of sand, which is a fulfilling act, which is actually fulfilling an act mindlessly. Rope, balance of power changes, longer and shorter rope. So in the first act, the rope between Pozo and Lucky is quite long, and in the second act, it becomes shorter because in second act, Pozo depends upon Lucky, and there is a change in the balance of power. There is an invisible rope between Vladimir and Estragon because even though they talk about leaving each other and drifting apart, eventually they come together. They always need each other. The rope becomes a symbol of submission to an illogical belief. In the case of Lucky, who actually surrenders to Pozo even if he had the chance to escape from Pozo. Gado becomes a symbol of hope and meaning in life. In other words, Gado can mean God. Gado can represent God, and God actually gives a sense of meaning in our lives. Okay, other notes. Vladimir and Estragon are different parts of a whole. Why? Because Estragon represents the body and Vladimir represents the mind. There may exist two messenger boys, one in the first act and one in the second act. So they might be twins or they might be brothers. Two acts mirror each other. In the first act, it is Estragon who enters the scene. In the second act, it is Vladimir who enters the scene. And there's a repetition of events. Pozo Lucky in the first act, and there's Pozo and Lucky in the second act as well. But there's a change in the balance of power. Waiting endlessly for Gado. Both the characters, Vladimir and Estragon, wait for Gado, but Gado never arrives. Who is Gado? We don't know. And is he for real? We don't know that as well. So that's all for the class on waiting for Gado. Thank you.